The lights of the studio were surgical in their intensity, casting sharp shadows across the stage where two generations of American influence were about to collide. On one side stood Richard Gere, a cinematic icon, a humanitarian, and a man whose very presence seemed to glow with the well-polished aura of Hollywood nobility. At 74, his charm hadn't dulled. His tailored navy suit hugged his frame with effortless elegance, and his silver hair caught the lights like a halo of moral authority. He smiled to the audience, not nervously, but like a man who believed he was on the right side of history. Across from him stood Caroline Leavitt, composed, unreadable. At 27, she wasn't just the youngest press secretary the White House had ever employed. She was its sharpest dagger. Her blonde hair was neatly pulled back, her hands folded casually in front of her. Though younger than many in the audience, her eyes scanned the room like a veteran politician who'd already buried a few careers beneath her carefully chosen words. As the cameras began to roll, the air grew still, like the few seconds before a storm hits. Richard spoke first. "We must never forget the role of compassion in politics," he began, voice rich and steady, hands gesturing with the flair of an old maestro. "True leadership demands that we rise above division and speak for the voiceless, the forgotten." Caroline blinked slowly, expression unchanged. "The oppressed, the marginalized. We must lead not with fear, but with empathy." A soft murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. This was classic Gere. His audience, hand-picked producers, coastal progressives, starry-eyed interns, were exactly the kind of people who still believed that charisma could beat clarity. But Caroline didn't clap. She tilted her head slightly. One eyebrow lifted. She had heard this speech 100 times. Maybe not from Gere himself, but from every polished actor, writer, and activist who thought moral grandstanding could take the place of real answers. Tonight, she didn't come to applaud. She came to peel the mask off. Caroline Leavitt didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was firm, deliberate, like a lawyer who already knew the jury was leaning her way. "Mr. Gere speaks about compassion," she said, arms still folded, eyes locked on his. "But for millions of Americans, compassion isn't a hashtag. It's a choice between heat or groceries." The room froze. Phones stopped mid-scroll. The audience, moments ago swooning at Gere's sermon, suddenly sat straighter. "In Youngstown, Ohio, a single mother I met last month is working 2 jobs, not because she wants to, but because she has to. She doesn't need a lecture on universal dignity. She needs lower gas prices and safer neighborhoods." Richard blinked. Once. Carolyn took a step forward, the stage lights catching the cross around her neck. "You talk about transcending ideology, but you live in gated calm while others survive in chaos. How many families in South Chicago have you sat with lately? How many of them have the luxury of rising above division when their kids can't play outside without hearing gunfire?" A low hum spread across the audience. Not applause, not protest, just awareness, the kind that feels like realizing you have underestimated the wrong person. Richard opened his mouth, perhaps to respond, perhaps to pivot, but Caroline didn't give him the chance. "What's simplistic," she said, her voice now edged with a quiet steel, "is believing your Instagram posts with monks make you an expert in struggle. What's naive is thinking your roles in movies translate into real-world solutions." A chuckle, dry and involuntary, slipped out from the third row. "And what's truly dangerous," she added, taking another step forward, "is thinking that moral theater can replace measurable policy. It can't, and Americans are done pretending it can." Gere shifted in place, uncharacteristically unsure. The audience didn't turn on him. Not yet. But they were no longer leaning in. They were watching her. Powerful person in the room. Richard tried to regroup. "I've spent years, decades traveling the world. I've seen poverty, war, injustice. I've used my platform to raise awareness, to spark change." "Awareness," Carolyn interrupted. Not loudly, but with the precise timing of someone tossing a match onto gasoline. Gere paused, his hands still gesturing in midair. The interruption threw him off rhythm, like a conductor whose orchestra had gone silent. She stepped forward once more. never breaking eye contact. You've raised awareness, Mr. Gere, but what have you changed? He said nothing. Carolyn turned to the audience, her voice carrying not just confidence now, but command. Posting about Darfur from a villa in the Hamptons isn't change. Giving speeches at awards shows doesn't clean fentanyl from American streets. And it certainly doesn't bring back the steel jobs your policies helped offshore. That was it. The shift wasn't subtle anymore. It was seismic. The audience, once politely enraptured by Hollywood glamour, was now fully in her orbit. Richard tried once more, reaching for safe ground. We need unity. We need to come together. But even he heard how hollow it sounded. His voice lacked conviction now, each word hanging like damp laundry that refused to dry. Carolyn took a final breath and delivered the sentence that would echo across every platform that night. Unity without truth is just compliance with delusion. Boom. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Camera zoomed in. Gere stood there, his polished exterior cracked, the practiced smile gone. The poised actor, exposed, not as evil, not as cruel, just outmatched, outdated. As applause erupted, Caroline didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply turned, nodded once to the moderator, and returned to her seat. The moderator's closing line, trembling slightly from the energy in the room, summed up what millions would feel watching the clip later that night. Well, I think we just witnessed a shift in the culture. And indeed they had, not because a young conservative humiliated an aging liberal icon, but because authenticity had at last triumphed over performance.